Elk 101 is just, it's its own beast, and it just keeps rolling down the hill. I'm just trying to hold on to it. I let out a cow call, and the cow call didn't even get out the end of my bugle tube, and a bull screams at us from clear across the other side. Just one of those bulls that when he answers, it's like, okay, he's fired up. You can call him in.
Definitely, and you can see my reaction on the film, not only when I shot, but when everybody else, when Cody and Trent came over, and Trent said, I was on full draw on it. I'm like, you were? I shot the bulls that you were after. There was just a disbelief that it was the same bull.
First day of season, I'm just as aggressive to the last day. Our approach is all about emotion, and it's just triggering an emotional response in that elk. After day 5, my hunting partner and I were in town, and we were loading the truck up with gas and probably grabbing a box of donuts or something for dinner. And this drunk bum, or I don't know, just comes walking down the side of the road there and looks at us dressed in camo and says, "You boys elk hunting, huh?" And we said, yeah, we're elk hunting. What are you up to? I've done my share of elk hunting. Like, oh, I bet you have. And kind of badgering him a little bit. And he said, "You boys want to know the secret to elk hunting?" I'm like, oh, do we ever? And so he gets up close and he looks around like there's this big secret, and he kind of whispers, "If you can't hear the road, you've gone too far." And it was all we could do not to laugh. We're like, "Oh, is that the secret, huh?" And we're like, "Well, we've been going in 15 miles and we still can't find elk." And he's like, "I'm telling you, boys, if you can't hear the road, you've gone too far." So, we mocked that for the next half hour driving back to camp. Just, "Hey, you want to know where the elk are?" "Yeah, they're right by the road." "Yeah, if you can't hear the road, you've gone too far." So as we're sitting there making fun of it, I look out the window and there's a 6-point bull standing 40 yards off of the highway driving back to camp. And coincidentally, we both shot our elk that year within 500 yards of the highway.
Welcome to the RNA Outdoors podcast, fueled by Ripcord Arrow Rest and First Light Hunting Apparel. At RNA, we are a public land DIY conservationists that love to share our passion for the outdoors. So join us and our team as we interview professionals in the industry to share insight knowledge that helps make hunters and anglers more successful. Hey listeners, welcome back to the show. Hope everyone is doing well, and just thought we would take a few minutes just to kind of reconnect with our subscribers and all our listeners out there. It's been a really busy spring so far. In early part of the year, was on the road doing a lot of traveling, hitting some podcasts at a lot of the trade shows, the Sheep Show in Reno, the Dallas Safari Club show, which was a really good show. Also, Western Hunting Expo in Salt Lake City, as well as just recently at the BHA Rendezvous, where we were able to get a couple podcasts done and just reconnect with some friends and some fellow RNA members as well. So it was good to get back on the road and see everyone. Just to kind of give you an update, we are going to be doing some giveaways. We've got actually a series of African safari podcasts that we've done throughout the first part of the year. And our plan is to give away some gear. So we've been in contact with Ripcord Arrow Rest, so be looking for some gear there. And also First Light, who is another one of our sponsors, who will be helping us with our little giveaway. So some stuff exciting there, and you're probably wondering why an African safari podcast. Well, there's a group of us from RNA that are going to be going over to Africa in June and July. So we thought we would tee up kind of our trip for that with a couple podcasts and some giveaway items. So be looking forward to that. It's tag season time, application time. A lot of things are hitting right now. Credit cards are getting stuck with hopefully not refunds and tags or tags that are coming your way. So, a lot of good things happening there. I was fortunate to get in on a New Mexico elk tag, so I'm excited to start planning for that, along with drawing general elk and deer licenses. So the season's already starting to fill up, which is exciting. And of course, in California in the spring, we're hunting pigs, we're hunting turkeys. So just a fun time of year to be out in the outdoors and, enjoying what we've been given, and that's public lands, and that's a lot of things that we see as sacred and hold close to our chests. So anyway, a lot of good things happening, a lot of fun things going on. The podcast is continuing to grow, and just really been exciting to watch all of our followers and subscribers send in questions, provide feedback, and just see the podcast kind of grow like it has. So thank you to everyone who has subscribed, listened, shared, or done something to help our efforts around pushing our message, which is really, to help and aid the DIY outdoorsman, whether you're a hunterman, a fisherman, if you like to go out and jump in your kayak and get in the river and just recreate in the river. We stand for all that, and we try to push, that agenda that we're really there for public lands and supporting a lot of the conservation organizations that do so. Looking at our podcast, this time we are actually on episode number 50. So we're at number 50. Crazy to think we've gotten to 50 podcasts already, and this is going to be a good one coming up. Speaking of this podcast, is brought to you by First Light Hunting and Clothing Apparel. First Light's just been a great partner for us at RNA Outdoors. We have been fortunate to partner with them and utilize them as one of our sponsors, and really just trying to promote their brand and really, ethical hunting and stewardship in the outdoors. I've been a member now of the First Light team for almost a year now, and again, just continue to be impressed year after year with all of the, engineering of the merino wool fabrics that they have. 10 years ago is about when First Light started, and they really changed the game when they started putting hunting patterns on merino wool. Most, merino wool has been out there a long time, but kind of they broke into that market and bringing it to the hunting world. So again, excited to continue our relationship with First Light, and you can find them online at firstlight.com. And of course, they've got multiple social media feeds on Instagram and Facebook as well. So anyway, with that, I will quit rambling, and we're going to move on. We were able and fortunate to catch up with some members of the Elk 101 team, Corey Jacobsen and Donnie Drake, who are, again, members of Elk 101 at the BHA Rendezvous here recently in Boise, Idaho. So we'd been trying to catch up with Corey, and, he's a busy guy, and, he had a seminar at the BHA Rendezvous, but we're able to carve out a little bit of his time to catch up with him and talk about some things. I know some projects that he's been working on, and, the Linguist video that most of you probably saw was a pretty incredible production that was put together. We go into detail on that. We talk a little bit about elk hunting strategies, of course, some question and answer, and then just some things that they're working on in Elk 101 that we'll be seeing in 2018. So anyway, without further ado, episode 50, Corey Jacobsen and Donnie Drake of Elk 101. Coming to you from the BHA Rendezvous here in Boise, 2018. This is the RNA Outdoors podcast. I'm your host, Lucas Paugh. And we're here with our esteemed colleagues, Mr. Tyler Houston and Ben Miller. Welcome back, guys.
Yeah, thanks.
Good to be in Boise.
Good to be in Boise.
Weather's nice to get some Rocky Mountain air. I come from sea level now,
so some fellow Idaho boys. So,
yeah, I appreciate that.
Kind of like the Western guys, not so much California guys now.
Yeah, well, what do you do about that? Anyway, yeah, so we're here, excited to be here at the show. We were just talking about, I think the last time we mic'd up was, I think after I killed my bull in Montana. We talked about my hunt, and I had my 2-pack mules.
Crane tag that he didn't fill.
Yeah.
3-pack mules.
Yeah, we did. We had Nick too, so it was kind of nice. It's always nice having someone extra when you're packing out elk. So, Speaking of elk today, we're excited to have part of the Elk 101 team, both Corey Jacobsen and Donnie Drake, back with us. They're friends of the podcast. We had both of them on at the Western Hunting Expo last year in Salt Lake, and it's been crazy. I was thinking about reflecting back over the last year and few months, the stuff that you guys have done in the last, year between, the Linguist. We're going to talk about that, the film, which you guys were kind of teeing up back at that time. Land of the Free happened last year. The World Elk Calling Championship, which Corey was a champion there at the ISC in Utah. And then the whole wolf hunting, expedition that you were on with Tyler was pretty neat, which we'll hit on a few of those topics. But I do want to welcome both Donnie and Corey back to the podcast. Welcome, guys.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us, definitely.
Yeah, we tried linking up at the Western Hunting Expo again this year, and man, it always just gets too busy. Yeah, no, and that's the trade shows are great, but it's always like when you get there, you have a plan and a schedule, and then it's like, okay, plan B takes an effect real quick. So anyway, we've got quite a few topics we're going to cover, and we'll kind of work through them and check through those. We also have kind of a Q&A that we want to go over and ask Corey and Donnie some questions on tactics and scenarios from questions that we've received from listeners, and also Tyler and Ben both as well. So anyway, the Linguist. I was thinking back about that, and, we kind of share a bond because I know you connected with Ken Outdoors, Ben Potter and Joel Wilson, who are two of my good friends, which is a small world when you really think about it. Ben and Joel run a video journalism business down in San Luis Obispo, California, and ended up actually really doing the cinematography and all the production on the Linguist video. But kind of thinking back on that, kind of from the conception phase, maybe talk about kind of where that came from, kind of where it started in the initial phases of the production. Totally, yeah. So David Brinker with Sitka Gear was the brainchild of it, and he called me and just said, hey, I've got this idea for a really cool film and want you to kind of help us out with it. And he said, it's going to be on the history of elk calling. And I thought, man, that's a dry subject to have to do a film on. And, how do you talk about the history of elk calling? And he's like, well, no, I envision getting like the pioneers of modern day elk calling together, like in a bar scene, all sitting around talking at a table and talking about the good old days. And I said, I could get behind that. And I said, what's my role going to be? And he's like, well, we want to follow you for like a week elk hunting, just to capture some calling footage. And I said, oh, okay, yeah, that'll be great, and we can do that. And so anyway, that's how it started, and my involvement was just 5 days with the camera, just following, and he said, we don't even need to get a kill on film, I just want to get some interaction, some calling interaction. And by the time it was all done, Ben, who you mentioned with Con Outdoors, I think it started the last weekend in July, and a year later in June, we finally wrapped up filming. And it was, I think he was with me for, 32 or 34 straight days during elk season. So it, they said we don't have to get a kill on film. We ended up getting 7 on film. But the film itself, we had 20 terabytes of footage. So we're shooting this film with, all the brand new red cameras, like literally what they filmed Jurassic Park and Star Wars with. And he's carrying this parabolic mic that, you see at the NFL games where they're trying to hear exactly what the quarterback's calling. He's carrying that around to get the most insane audio of elk. And there's so much incredible footage from that. Yeah. And we narrowed it down to a 29-minute film. So there was so much that got chopped out. And really, I thought it's going to just chop from, just bounce from place to place, and it flows so great. Kana is they've got a incredible eye for anything cinematic. Yeah. And then with David Brinker's vision of the film, I got to kind of just sit back and watch it all unfold. And it absolutely does justice, I think, to the history of elk calling and the people who made elk calling real.
It was an amazing video. 29 minutes, you're thinking it goes by so fast. It's like, where's the rest of it? I kept watching that content, just how that flowed was just amazing. It was a really cool video you guys put together. So it was neat to watch.
Fun.
Thinking about, being in the presence of guys like Will Primos, and part of the video shows, him making the pallet plate, or going back in time when he did that, and then you went over to Colorado and met with Wayne Carlton. Which to me, like Wayne Carlton, Larry D. Jones are like the guys, to me, were like the revolutionary pioneers of elk calling, and of course your dad, Rocky. But being with those guys and having those conversations, what was it like for you to be able to be in those situations with those guys and really digging into their brains and understanding kind of the history of the elk call?
For sure. It was, so I've known Will Primos since I was 18 and good friends with him. I've known Wayne Carlton for quite a while and, more just see him at shows and talk, how was hunting season type of thing. And then my dad, obviously, I've known him for a while. Yeah. But Larry D. Jones, I'd never had the opportunity to meet. And same, like you said, when you think back to, I started elk hunting, I got my license in 1983. And I was calling elk with a diaphragm at least 3 or 4 years before that. That's when diaphragms first came out. And as a kid, and even growing up, I didn't realize that 1979, 1980 was the first time there were actually diaphragms available for elk calling. And it was due to Larry D. Jones and Wayne Carlton, both about the same time, came out with that concept and developed that concept. And so, it's something we took for granted and without even realizing how brand new that whole technology was.
Sure.
Just literally I jumped in at the ground floor of that. And so it was really cool to go back and hear their story of what led them to start that. And had they not started it, who knows?
Yeah. I remember the old calls my dad used to use was the old, was like the 2 little plastic pieces with the rubber band around it. You called in between those, sounded like more like a duck call than an elk call. So, that's come a long ways for sure.
A lot of it was, a lot of the concept was behind turkey hunting. That was kind of the way they stretched the latex was to try to get that really high pitched, really was where Will came from. And then next thing you know, you expand that into an elk call. And
he's Rocky. And
for a lot of the turkey hunting I do, I'll throw in an elk reed and I'll use that or a pallet plate or a diaphragm for a lot of the turkey calling I do. So it's really the same idea, same concept. So, yeah, so thinking about, so you said you were on the road for 32 days, 33 days?
We started September 1st of actual elk hunting time.
Yeah.
And we ended October 7th, I believe, with the Hunt of a Lifetime hunt.
Yeah, it was.
So thinking about through all that footage and all that time on the road, there was some, like I said, some incredible footage taken on that video. There's also a lot of stuff that I saw in the shop back in San Luis that Ben had that didn't make it in the film either. There was tons of elk footage, but the stuff that got in there clearly was what defined that video in my mind. There was the sparring scenes. There was, of course, the scenes in New Mexico. And then what I thought was probably the most touching was the last scene with your son and that whole dynamic that happened when that bull came in and he got it. And it's just, you talked about it, and I know you and I had talked about it previously, but actually seeing it happen and on video was pretty incredible. I'm sure for you, it probably meant the world to you to see that.
It was, and it goes back to, the game plan. All they wanted to capture was interaction between father and son. They didn't care about him being successful on the hunt, just, that whole tradition of elk calling being passed down, because it was handed to me from, the forefathers of elk calling, and then they wanted to capture me passing it on to the next generation. And in typical Isaac fashion, he's 15 now, just turned 15, so he was 13 during the hunt. He'd already killed 2 elk with a rifle at that point. At 13 years old, 11 and 12, he killed 2 elk with a rifle, a 6-point the year before. And he's like, Dad, I'm done rifle hunting. I just want an archery hunt.
It's too easy.
Yeah. So
he's got a pretty good mentor, though. So
no, that's, there is some of that, I think, but ultimately it really comes down to what's inside the person.
Sure.
Yes, having somebody take you by the hand and lead you around is good, but you still have to make it all happen. And, Isaac, he's sitting there thinking, all right, I've got a guy that's carrying the same camera they used in Star Wars. I'm going to be a superstar. I'm going to kill an elk on camera and be in this film. And I said, buddy, listen, we have 2 days to hunt. We're hunting public land, over-the-counter tag, in an area we haven't even scouted or been to this year. We're just going to get some film, just, have fun. If we can hear an elk bugle, that'll be great, but we probably aren't going to kill anything. Oh, yeah, we'll kill one. I shot mine last year on the first day. And
yeah. You spoiled them. Corey.
Averages are going to catch up with you, and it's probably going to be this year because you're bow hunting for the first time.
Yeah.
Well, as luck would have it, we did get into an elk the first morning and chased it all the way up the mountain. And Isaac has type 1 diabetes, so his blood sugar kept going low because, we were just hiking straight up. And so we'd have to stop every 5 minutes, and he'd eat a granola bar, and we're going through 6 or 8 granola bars in the morning trying to keep his blood sugar up. And we get up to the top, and the bull bed's down, and you can just tell this bull is not he's not going to come in. He's not fired up. We sat there for probably 4 hours trying to get him worked up, and finally I turned to Isaac and said, buddy, it's probably not going to happen. We can stay here and hunt this bull tonight and again tomorrow, but tomorrow's the last day of the season. Or we can go to where you shot your bull with the rifle last year and just see if there's any elk over there. And he's sitting there. We're, 2,500, 3,000 feet above the vehicle at this point. And he's looking down, and he's like, so we have to hike back down to the truck and then drive 3 miles or 3 hours to this other area, and it's, 6 hours before dark. And he finally says, let's go to the other area. Okay, all right, it's your hunt. So, again, I'm in the mindset of we're just capturing footage of me and my son hanging out in the outdoors and calling elk. And his mind, it's like, find me an elk to put my tag on, would you? Yeah. And so
I want to be 3 for 3 here.
Yeah, exactly. You're going to ruin my odds here, Dad.
Come on, don't you own Elk 101, Dad? You do this, don't you?
And it was one of those ones where you're kind of thankful that the elk didn't get fired up because you didn't want to have to pack it out of there.
Yeah.
It was downhill, but it was, our knees were killing us just hiking down empty. So we get back, we rip camp down, jump in the truck, and we're flying down the canyon. And we drive probably 2 hours, and we're taking the back way to get there. So we're going through elk country the whole way. It's, late afternoon into early evening. And we finally get to this big overlook where we drop down into another canyon. And I looked at Isaac and said, buddy, we aren't going to make it to the other area before dark. And our only hope is to get something to bugle here. And we had maybe 30 minutes of legal shooting light left. So we get out of the truck, grab our stuff. Actually, we grabbed a bugle tube and walked over the ridge, 200 yards, 100 yards, and got on this rock and just standing there listening. Everything's quiet, big, beautiful basin there. I let out a cow call, and the cow call didn't even get out the end of my bugle tube, and a bull screams at us from clear across the other side. Just one of those bulls that when he answers, it's like, okay, he's fired up. You can call him in.
Yeah.
And so I look at Isaac, I'm like, okay, buddy, here's the deal. This bull is probably a mile away. He answered right back. He's definitely hot. I don't know where he's going. By the time we get there, he might be out of the canyon. He might be staying put. I don't know. So Donnie comes walking over, and he has Onyx map on his phone. And he said, there's a meadow about 300 yards from where the bull just bugled. I bet he's going to that meadow to spend the night there. And I'm like, that's our play then. We've got to just sprint to that meadow. So we run back to the truck, grab our packs, grab the bow, take off literally running down the hill, get across, and it's relatively flat in the bottom, fortunately. We cross the river and get over there, and we get to the meadow, and we literally climb up on this little knob 60 yards from the meadow. I let out another cow call, and bam, the bull hammers from the other side of the meadow.
Wow.
So I look at Isaac, and I said, get down by that tree on the edge of the meadow. I'm going back here to call. Donnie stayed right there, and then Ben went down with the camera with Isaac. And I'm just thinking, we have 10 minutes at most to make this happen. Isaac has no clue what he's doing. Like, he's down there by himself with a camera guy. And
in a meadow.
In a meadow.
Yeah.
Which
With a screaming elk coming at
yeah,
you.
yeah. I can just see him, sneaking out in the middle of the meadow trying to get close to the elk. And so I get back. I can't see him. I can see where he's at, and I can see the meadow. And literally, the second I get there, the cows run out. Just a group of cows runs out into the middle of the meadow, just prancing in the meadow, playing. And so I start cow calling. The bull just screams up there, and I do our normal calling routine. I cow call, the bull answers, and immediately I cut him off. And I screamed the most aggressive challenge bugle I could at him. You could hear air come out of the canyon when that bull just like, and as soon as I bugled, I could see him coming out in the meadow. And just this huge body, just shoulders just rippling, coming out in the meadow. And I'm looking at, I'm trying to pull up my binoculars and look, and it looks like he's just this little spike raghorn thing. And I thought, there is no way. He was screaming. He's got cows. His body looks huge.
Where's the big bull?
Yeah. And I thought, okay, the herd bull's going to be behind him.
Sure.
And then I thought, this is Isaac's first elk with a bow. He can shoot that bull. He better not be picky.
Yeah.
So the bull, it literally just text work call in, comes in the middle of the meadow, and then starts circling around to get downwind of us. And I can't see Isaac or anything. And all of a sudden I see all the elk kind of spook and take off running, and then they stop. And then all of a sudden the bull takes off running again, and they all kind of scatter out. And I thought, yeah, he must be out in the middle of the meadow and scared them. So I pull up my binoculars, and I'm looking, cow. And, oh, there's the bull. He's standing out there looking back. And I'm kind of looking at his antlers going, there's something goofy there. And then I notice he's got a big patch of blood running down the side right behind the shoulders. And I thought, you got to be kidding me.
Yeah. Did Ben grab the bow and shoot?
Yeah, exactly. How did he
do that?
Maybe he got injured fighting or something.
Yeah.
And so I walk down, and Isaac's standing there, and he looks at me. He's got this look of panic on his face. And he says, Dad, I think I shot over him, and I might have hit a cow.
Oh.
I said, what? And he said, well, I ranged the clump of grass before he came in, and when he came in, I put my pin on him, and it felt good, but I saw my arrow, and it looked like it was going over his back. And then I heard it hit something, and the cow took off running. He's like, I think I might have hit the cow. Well, cows are legal too. And he's like, bye. And, he's just starting to, and I said, buddy, I looked at the bull, and there's a patch of blood right behind his shoulders, and he lost, he didn't know how to react. He was just, you see it on film.
Yeah, that's
just
awesome. Yeah, neat.
And then, of course, tracking it, and we had a little troubles, just, there wasn't a lot of blood. And Donnie had found the bull and came back, and he's like, it's right over here, and it only went, 150 yards or something. Oh. And so he let Isaac, hey, buddy, there's not much blood. You're going to have to really look at the ground here and start tracking. So he's down there, oh, here's a track, and looks up, and it's laying right there. And for a dad, I think for anybody in that situation, to see someone find success like that and be so excited and so passionate about what they're doing, it was a pretty humbling moment.
Yeah, that's great. I think I get more excited when other people shoot stuff. Like he shot an antelope this year with his bow, and we're high-fiving like we were 15-year-olds.
Yep.
That's what it's all about.
Totally.
And great. And to bring it back to Canna, with Ben there, and Ben got a crash course in elk hunting.
Yeah, he did.
And he was more excited than I think any of the three of us were on that. And he was just like, I can't believe that just happened. And
Oh, I know. I remember going into the shop, and Joel was in there. I think he was tinkering on my bow, and Ben came in, and him and Joel were talking about this. And of course, Joel knows about you and knows about Elk 101 and Will Primos. Ben has no clue, right? I mean, and Ben did the video the year before the Tendoys video hunt for Sitka, which was that sheep hunt that they did up in the Tendoys, and I'm like, you realize what you're doing, like who you're going with, and I'm like, he's never elk hunted before. He's a huge duck hunter, right? And the lessons and the schooling he got in those 30 days. I mean, he drew a Wyoming tag this year, so he's going to be going hunting this year. He went up to Oregon last year, so I know he's getting into it now. But yeah, I can only imagine the amount of stuff that he learned during that time.
Yeah, and it's it brings a challenge. You get a guy from California at sea level that's never hunted elk before, and really is he's like, I'm just here to capture. Sitka wants me to capture and get some good audio, and we camped at 96 or 9,700 feet. The first day we went up to 10.6 or 10.7, and that camera gear. He's got every lens and battery pack and 4 different cameras hanging off of him. He kept right up with us and never said a word. He's a little hard of hearing, which brought some challenges the first couple of days of communicating to each other. Ben, there's an elk right there. Ben, there's an elk right there. Stop. Huh?
yeah.
Oh. But no, he told me right from the beginning, you just do what you do. I will do everything I can not to affect that in any way. And he absolutely stayed true to that.
Yeah.
And like I said, I think he gained an education that it lit the fire in him. I talked to him just yesterday, and he was like, I cannot wait. He's like, I'm working on a story from my hunt last year, and I didn't kill anything, but I just want to share it. And I'm going this year to Wyoming, and he's so passionate about elk hunting.
Yeah, he is. It's neat to see that. I mean, like I say, from a guy who is a huge duck hunter, and he's hunted deer, but he's never been, an elk hunter. And so it changes people's lives, people that have never done that before. You always think about, the first time you went elk hunting probably with your dad, or I know for you it was probably with your dad.
Smoking a cigarette, walking down the trail. That's how I learned how to hunt. It's like, Dad, do you think they can smell that? No, it's fine. The wind's blowing the other direction. It'll be all right. There's a wonder why we didn't kill very many elk.
Yeah. But there's all those little lessons you learn along the way, and that's I've always said, you were talking about that bull. You can never judge a bull by his bugle. We were hunting a bull this year that had that same raspy, just nasty. And there was other raghorns running by, and I'm like, I'm not going to shoot any of these. I'm going to wait for him. Out comes this little 5-point just coming down, just screaming, bugling, and you're just like, really? Where's the big one at? But yeah, it's always an education when you're out there, and that's what we like about it. There's always a new challenge, something around the corner every time. So,
So is your son hooked on archery now? Or what's his?
He has been since he was like 2. So yeah, I mean the fact that he shot his first 2 with the rifle. In Idaho, you have to shoot 40 pounds legally to hunt elk. When he was 11, he was shooting 43. And I told him, you can't hunt elk unless you shoot 45. And he argued, Dad, the law says 40. I said, well, my law says 45. I don't want your first experience shooting an elk to lose one.
Yeah.
And there might not be a big difference between 40 and 45, but I think that 45 is the target we need to aim for. And so he shot that first one with the rifle. The next year, he was shooting 45 pounds. He was at full draw 3 times on 6-point bulls in a 24-hour period.
Jeez.
And then ended up, in Idaho, you can shoot rifle or archery as a youth.
Yeah.
And so we took him out, and he shot one with the rifle. But yeah, he drew a turkey tag this year. He's like, I don't even want to shoot one with the shotgun. I only want to shoot it if I can shoot it with my bow. And so he's hooked.
That's cool.
Great.
So kind of fast forwarding a year, so then we get into last year and the whole land of the free. Donnie's wearing a sweatshirt right now, and I may point this question towards him. Looking at that elk you shot in Wyoming, that was just a cranker, that video. That whole dynamic of that 50-day series was crazy because, I'm not a big one to watch like 40 to 50-minute videos on YouTube. You kind of get lost, but you get sucked into all those videos. And those guys did a great job, kind of producing and putting that together. But that elk hunt that you had in Wyoming and that bull was pretty special, the way all that unfolded.
Definitely, and you can see my reaction on the film.
Yeah.
As not only when I shot, but when everybody else, when Cody and Trent came over, and Trent said, I was on full draw on it. I'm like, you were? I shot the bulls that you were after. There was just a disbelief that it was the same bull, because when we had seen the bull that they were chasing, it looked like it went up and away from them, and we were back around the other side, headed 180 away from them, and run into that bull. It just gave them the slip and went in between us.
Yeah.
But it was definitely a long time coming for me to shoot a nice branch antler bull.
Yeah, that was a nice bull for sure.
That was a great bull.
That was the biggest bull you ever shot then?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, that was a great bull.
Yeah, and that kind of that dynamic of them, starting in Oregon and then just kind of moving essentially east is the way they went, and dropping, in all those different places. The logistics of that had to have been, just incredible trying to plan all that, because you got 4 or 5 guys and you're trying to, hammer Roosevelt's in Oregon, and then you shoot over to Wyoming, and then they hunted in Utah and Montana. They were all over the place, but being able to do something like that on the road for 50 days and trying to get and it just seemed like everywhere they went, it was just like an elk wrecking crew. They were laying down elk like.
It was an amazing video.
It was crazy.
It's just great to be able to, share camp with other people that are, hey, that they do it this way, we do it this way, and it's like we didn't think about that, or they didn't think about that, and just it got fired up, especially after the season. How you're saying that it's 50-minute videos, but it's not hunting season anymore, and I think people that are hunters, they just want to be able to consume that and soak it up, and people weren't just watching it for somebody shooting an elk for a kill shot. They were watching it, learning, asking questions. What was in your pack? Why did you go up this drainage? How did you do this? How did you do that? So overall, just a good learning experience for a broad amount of hunters.
I watched it because I was jealous. Who gets to go hunting for 50 days straight? My wife would be like cracking the whip after 10, going, "You're coming home."
Well, if you watch it, they all have families and responsibilities and everything. So the first week they're hunting close to home. The second week, Cody and Trent are hunting Wyoming, and then Cody goes home. Trent and Steve, I think, hunt Colorado, and then Trent goes home, and Cody and they're kind of
mixing it
rotating
up,
through there so that they are able to not be gone 50 straight days. And
didn't Trent shoot his first? He shot multiple branch antler bulls, but he never shot a 6-point. Is that correct?
Yes.
You guys were with him on that hunt when he shot his first 6-point.
And Trent's just, he's a trigger happy logger. That's really what it is. He just puts meat in the freezer, and he's never held out. He's never worried about a 6-point, and he wasn't on this trip at all either. But I told him, this area we're hunting, there's not a lot of big bulls, but there's a lot of 6-point bulls. You don't have to shoot a 5-point. So I told him, you can't shoot a 5-point before 10 o'clock in the morning. So you have to hold out for at least 3 hours to, wait for a 5-point. And it turned out, it was our last day, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was our last day to hunt.
Last day to hunt. We kind of we broke up into 2 groups to just go and scout and find elk. And Donnie and I found a pretty good little pocket elk. So we went back in there the next morning with him, and it took, we called in 3 times.
3 times.
And then he shot it at 12 yards or something, 15 yards. And
Wow.
So was he just coming in and then you guys chasing him off, or how did that happen?
Yeah, we do chase a lot of elk off.
yeah, definitely.
You're not very aggressive from what I heard. You're kind of the guy who lays back.
The ones that we run by, we don't even know that are there, but the ones that we know are there, we usually end up chasing off. And so, no, it was there was a huge canyon between us and the bull came all the way down to the edge of it and just didn't want to cross it and come up. So he left, went back up, we crossed it, went up and got up there and set up, and he came in and just couldn't see in that burn. He could see enough and couldn't see elk and got nervous and left. And as soon as he went over the ridge, we sprinted to the ridge and got set up and challenged him, and he turned, and you could tell when he was coming in. He was on a mission. He was coming in to put a finish to it.
Trent and I would get along well. I've never shot a 6-point. I've shot a lot of 5 points, but never 6 points. So I'm trigger happy myself.
The difference is I'd never tell you to wait. You have to wait till 10 o'clock.
Yeah, we tell Lucas you got to wait, but Ben and I will shoot. It's fine.
No, it's good. No, it was a neat series. It was, like I say, it was actually the series where you were excited to kind of see the next one coming out. I know there was a huge buzz around it and a lot of social media presence, but it was neat just following that story that they did. And I'm sure there's probably going to be a phase 2 of that at some point, but it was neat watching what those guys did. So
yeah, phase 2 starts in about 4.5 months.
Yep.
Back on the road.
Similar to that again? Or?
Yeah.
Are they?
Yeah.
Right.
Version 2, Land of the Free.
2.0.
cool.
So you guys will be involved in that as well, I imagine?
Yeah, I know Dirk's, I think Dirk's going to Colorado with them. We're still trying to figure out what's going to work. And like you say, you get 5 groups of people with 3 to 5 guys each hunting 5 different states and trying to coordinate schedules.
Yeah.
That's a lot. It all depends on who's getting tags, too.
Yeah,
because if you're drawing tags and...
It could change if you wanted to hunt over the counter, in Idaho, that may change if you draw a tag somewhere. So you almost got to wait till the tag season gets through or the applications and then figure out how you're going to put it together.
Totally.
Cool. Let's go over just a couple question and answers, couple scenarios and tactics, and then we can kind of wrap it up. So one of the first questions that comes in, and it was really around, being aggressive, like Tyler said, thinking about your guys' elk tactic, which is pretty aggressive. It's getting in their face, right? It's, if I cow call and he bugles immediately, I know that he wants to play, right? And that's one that we're going to at least go pursue. But thinking about as the rut progresses, do you get more, and is it even possible to get more aggressive? Or, is it from the standpoint though, maybe as these bulls continue to get called at, during the mid-September timeframe, do you just continue to keep that high level of aggression on them throughout that time?
Yeah, and honestly, it's first day of season, I'm just as aggressive to the last day, and it doesn't change. And there's really, when you break it down and look at the philosophy of it, I'm not trying to communicate to an elk through language, which you get call-shy elk and stuff. If you're trying to bugle to them and make them hear something and respond in a language manner, they're going to be call shy. They might not do it. But our approach is all about emotion, and it's just triggering an emotional response in that elk. And elk are an animal. They have instinct, and that's what they live off of. They aren't an intelligent animal that processes and thinks through things. And so everything we do is trying to trigger that emotional reaction. And in an elk, fortunately, during the month of September, they're just filled with testosterone, and it's pretty easy to push the right button. And the key to it is just getting in close and trying to call to a call-shy elk or a herd bull or a timid bull from 400 or 500 yards away is going to be completely different than if you're 150 yards away. So we just try to get close to the elk and then just hammer them, just aggressive in their face. And realistically, it works all through the season. It works on big bulls, little bulls. It doesn't work every time, unfortunately, but it's a pretty good strategy.
Well, it's something I've told these guys all the time. It's like we hear a bull bugle. It's like, I'm already seeing dust, and
we can't keep up with Lucas while he's running to go shoot an elk.
But it's like they always wonder, like, well, God, how do you kill elk? It's like if I hear one, I want to get as close as I can and see what it is, you know. And I've hunted with a lot of people that like to sit back, wait for them to come to them. I mean, there's different dynamics of elk hunting, right? And a lot of people are successful in a lot of different ways, but I've always found that, yeah, they bugle, challenge them immediately. If they want to play, then it's on, you know, and get in and get aggressive with them. And if you win them or they blow you, I mean, that's elk hunting. But, you know, a few times out of 10, the odds are going to work in your favor. Yeah. And if it's the right animal and what you want, I mean, you have that opportunity. So I agree. I think aggressive has always been my tactic.
It's definitely helped me a lot. I mean, just following you guys, you know, in the last few years and, you know, signing up, being a member of the University Elk kind of thing has really helped me kind of be more aggressive because I'm not always with these guys. You know, I end up hunting a lot by myself, and it's, you know, it's always a little bit harder to kill something when you're on your own. You can tell. I mean, it's just different trying to close that distance and be there. But I've had so many more encounters being aggressive and kind of, you know, really hats off to you guys for giving a lot of advice to myself and everybody else, but it's definitely helped me for sure.
Well, I think that you touched on something there. It's just you have more encounters, and that's what it takes to be successful. You can't count on one call-in or two call-ins and hoping to capitalize on that. If you have 6 or 8 call-ins in a 6 or 8 day hunt, there's a chance that you're going to fill a tag. But if you only have 1 or 2 actual encounters where you're at full draw or you're right in close there and know something's going to happen, you know, so I think that being aggressive, you create opportunities. Whereas when you're timid, you wait for opportunities to arise, and that's a recipe for failure a lot of times.
Sure.
So.
Yeah, that's kind of what Ben and I have never really killed that
I'm a
elk.
failure. Yep, I'd sit there and wait and watch amazement.
I
Think my heart's going to stop beating by the time he walks in, and then he's walking away.
It only gets worse as you get closer.
Yeah.
Next question was one I think Tyler raised. It's really when you're in the mode of, I'm not closing the distance on a good bull, but I've got all these satellite bulls around me. How do you maybe change tactic if you're trying to hunt a herd bull or a bigger mature bull, but you're like, you know what, I got 2 more days to hunt, and if I could maybe focus on a smaller satellite raghorn bull, is there a tactic change or is there a strategy change that you would use to maybe hunt more of a satellite bull versus a larger mature bull, or is it very similar?
Donnie?
It's all going to be on the wind. If you only have 2 days left to hunt, you're just getting downwind and taking whichever one it wants to play and working that one, whether you can get them pulled away from the herd or you have to work in towards the herd, and whichever one wants to pipe off and fight with you.
Whichever one makes it to the setup first
Yes,
gets shot.
sure.
that was kind of more of my question because, you know, a lot of times we'll kind of hold out. I do anyway, especially on with Lucas now, is kind of hold out for the bigger bull. You're chasing the herd bulls, you know, day after day after day, and then it comes down to the hunt. It's like, you know, I want to fill my tag. You know, I don't care about the trophy hunt. I don't care how big they are. I just want meat in the freezer and say I was successful on the tag. So I always run into that problem where you're trying to chase it, and then, you know, if there's a different tactic to get to a satellite bull that's maybe, you know, they always bugle maybe a little more or they're a little less aggressive. So I guess so you're saying basically if one's hot, they're going to come in, whether it's a satellite or a herd bull or not. And
I really think there's a demographic issue there too, because early in the season, you know, say August 30th through September 7th or 8th or so, those big mature herd bulls aren't herd bulls yet. They're off by themselves. They're in their staging area, and they're super irritable. I mean, if you can get in on those bulls before they get cows, you can call them right into your lap. And that's why we like to hunt early, because those more mature bulls aren't herded up. Once they get in with the cows and the cows are in estrus, they've got their attention right there, and it's pretty hard to pull them away for a fight or anything else.
And early, you're still doing like an aggressive calling
all the way through. We're just focusing on those herd bulls that aren't in the herd yet.
And you're not starting with an estrus cow call, nothing, just
a regular cow call.
Oh, regular cow call.
Yeah, so all of our setups, every single calling setup starts with a cow call. The bull responds, which any bull's going to respond in September if you're in close and give them a cow call. And once he responds, then we just hammer him with the challenge bugle. And it doesn't matter if it's, we called in a spike in Oregon a couple of years ago that came in, eyes rolled back, slobbering. You talk about being fooled by a bugle.
Yeah.
He walked in and I thought, no, there's a 6-point behind him, and sat there, and he walked right up and bugled at us on camera. It's like, you've got to be kidding me.
He's going to be a nasty bull someday.
Fuzzy horn spike.
So, but early in that season,
been dead.
Oh yeah,
back when you could kill spikes. Of course, in Oregon, I think in some places you can kill spikes,
Montana's all closed off to that mostly now.
Yeah. But, you got during that same time, you have the smaller, the satellite bulls that are actually running the herds. And they're the ones that do all the work. They gather up the herds, they get the harems established, and then the big bulls come in and run them off and take over.
Yeah.
But that's the time that it's usually harder to kill those small bulls because they just want to bugle and run. They've got their herd, and they know that they're going to lose a fight if they come in. So it can be harder to get those smaller bulls to actually come in and get a shot at them. Then as during that transition, from the pre-rut into the peak rut, that September 10th through the 18th time frame, you can call in anything. I mean, they're fighting, they're establishing dominance, they're so aggressive. They want to prove who's the stronger bull. The young satellite bulls have had their herds. Now they got them taken away, and they're just frantically trying to find a cow, anything. So that for me is the peak time for calling, the week before the peak rut. And then you get into the peak rut, and those herd bulls are just focused on breeding. They've got the cows. It can be hard to pull them away. The satellite bulls are the ones that'll come running to anything you throw at them. But again, the key is just getting close. If you can get close to a herd bull that last week of September, even if he has a cow in estrus, you get close to him and pressure him and challenge him, and he'll leave the cows and come in to settle a score.
Cool. One of the last questions, and we were kind of joking about it is before we got on and started recording, but it's really how to approach kind of overhunted areas, close to roads. And what's interesting is in a lot of those areas, you'll find, good elk country. You'll find hidden pockets. You'll find canyons that are right off the highway, but a lot of times, sometimes can't hold elk. But thinking about the places you guys hunt, not only the predation in Idaho, and we see that in Montana where we hunt too with wolves, but thinking about hunting in areas of high traffic population or roads, is there any secrets there to that, or is there anything that you guys do in your tactics that may change based on location versus being, 15 miles, 10 miles packed in somewhere where there's nobody else?
I think we tried bivvy hunting a couple times, and it just felt like we were so locked to one area that if the elk weren't there, if they weren't responding, or if there were wolves there, that we were just we were stuck there. And so we've got into more of that mobile mindset of setting up a base camp and then driving any different direction and just doing huge day hunts, where we'll hike 12, 14 miles a day.
Just out of the truck normally?
Yep, just out of the truck and come back. And if we find a pocket of elk 3 or 4 miles back in and it's not getting pressured, we might go back and do an overnight type hunt. But for the most part, we're coming back and we're just covering a ton of country. With that being said, elk can be next to a highway just as easy as they can be 15 miles back in. They don't like pressure. So if there's a trailhead where there's hikers all summer and they're continually, seeing people and smelling people, they're probably going to get pushed back away from that. But if you've got a stretch of highway that's 15 miles long and goes through some beautiful looking elk country and there's not camps set up all alongside it, there's no reason there can't be an elk coming down and feeding in the meadow right next to the highway at night and going and bedding a quarter mile up on the first knob there on the north facing slope. So we don't overlook anything. If it looks like good elk country, we'll hunt it.
You never find the drunk guy coming out of the bar slumming around.
No, we were just telling a story before the podcast of, when we were young, we would just go with a Snickers bar and a 7-Up in our backpack and go all day and not have a game bag or a knife or anything. And we did that for about 5 straight days and just weren't getting into elk. And I'm talking covering 12, 14 miles in rough country and coming back and going to the next canyon and doing the same thing. And after day 5, my hunting partner and I were in town and we were loading the truck up with gas and probably grabbing a box of donuts or something for dinner. And this drunk bum, or I don't know, just comes walking down the side of the road there and looks at us dressed in camo and says, "You boys elk hunting, huh?" And we said, yeah, we're elk hunting. What are you up to? I've done my share of elk hunting. Like, oh, I bet you have. And, kind of badgering him a little bit. And he said, "You boys want to know the secret to elk hunting?" I'm like, oh, do we ever? And so he gets up close and he looks around like there's this big secret. And he kind of whispers, "If you can't hear the road, you've gone too far." And it was all we could do not to laugh. We're like, "Oh, is that the secret, huh?" And we're like, "Well, we've been going in 15 miles and we still can't find elk." And he's like, "I'm telling you, boys, if you can't hear the road, you've gone too far." So, we mocked that for the next half hour driving back to camp. Just, "Hey, you want to know where the elk are?" "Yeah, they're right by the road." "Yeah, if you can't hear the road, you've gone too far." So as we're sitting there making fun of it, I look out the window and there's a 6-point bull standing 40 yards off of the highway driving back to camp. And coincidentally, we both shot our elk that year within 500 yards of the highway. And so, we still, 20-some years later, bring that up. If you can't hear the highway, you've gone too far.
Yeah, there's little hidden pockets of elk here and there, you know. I mean, it happened like this year because we had such an early snow in Montana that drove all these elk. And, I mean, there was elk bugling behind people's houses most of the time up where we hunt, you know, 500 yards. I hunted probably 30 days this year out of the back of my cabin, just walking straight out, and there was elk 500, 600 yards just bugling right behind the cabin, which has never happened before. You know, we've had that place for 10 years, and it's just weird. You know, they're hidden pockets. They get enough pressure, and they push into areas where people aren't always there.
It gets brought up quite often when we go to the end of a trail, end of a road, and then walk a trail, and the trail's there no more, and then we go another 10, 12 miles past there, and it's turnaround time, and I'm like, yeah, we can't hear the road, can we?
We should have stayed closer.
And if you hear a quad or an ATV back there, you're going to be like, really? Wow.
Yeah.
I was elk hunting in Colorado this year, and same deal. We'd gone in. We'd actually did, I think it was 26 miles in 24 hours is what it ended up being. Had glassed up this herd bull, went in 13 miles one way and on a pack, and we literally got up into this wilderness area, and there was two people sitting in this canyon, and we were thinking, how the heck did two people? I mean, this was an older lady and an older gentleman, and it was during rifle season, so they had their orange on. That's how I saw them. And come to find out, they had been guided into this area, and there was like tarps and game bags and stuff stretched down the trail, but they probably got brought up there from a road and dropped off, and we packed in, tried to find this bull, and we found the bull, and I didn't connect on it, but I was just thinking, like, man, you go back there 13 miles, you know, and took us most of the afternoon to get back there, set up a bivvy. It was like 4 degrees that night, and woke up the next morning, and then you find these people, and you're just like, how the heck?
Is this the same lady that said she was going to shoot you if you stepped out in the open?
Yeah, I got threatened in elk country. We were actually walking down this little drainage, and she was up in this meadow, and all of a sudden I hear this, if you take one more step, you're going to get shot. So, of course, I stopped. And I looked over and I saw her sitting there, and she had a rifle sitting on a bipod. So, of course, I stopped, and my buddy was behind me, and we backed out. And he looked at me, and it was probably the same look Isaac had after he'd shot that bull. We're like, did she just say that? I'm like, yeah, she did. And, of course, how do you react to that, right? You got people in the woods, both with firearms. So, of course, we blew out of that area. The funny part was we ended up going down, and we winded a bunch of elk that were actually coming back up to where they were. So I didn't feel too bad about it. But, yeah, I was like, I've never been, threatened in the elk woods like that. So that kind of ruined the trip for us. But
yeah, no kidding.
Nonetheless.
Has anything ever happened to you guys like that? I mean, besides the guy that puts a note on your windshield and says,
ours is all pretty.
So
pretty
last year on my bull in Wyoming, we were 6 miles from the truck, or we were 7 miles from the truck, and we had gone up that drainage, and there's a road that dead ends, and then there's a 4-wheeler trail kind of up at the very top, and we're in there calling elk, and the bulls are spawning in the bottom, and then we could hear some cow calls up above us. So we're like, well, his cows are up there. He's going to be chasing it. So let's get up here and get up above him and get the wind right when he's coming up. So we're walking along and hear a cow call. We get up real close, and there's no sound. But then we hear the cow call and look over, and there's a 65-year-old guy sitting underneath a tree with an arrow on his rest, just cow calling, waiting for an elk to come in.
Wow.
In the middle of nowhere.
Sure.
And he had gotten dropped off. His son was actually down in the bottom of the drainage playing with the elk down there that was bugling. So, yeah, we've ran into people like that. And
just nobody's threatened us to shoot us.
Yeah, exactly.
And
it's a different level.
Yeah,
it is, and that's, I don't know. There's no place for that because
we're all hunting. Right?
I mean, we were on public land. We were on public land.
You didn't know they were there. You're back in 13 miles, and for somebody to be brazen enough to say, "You take one more step, you're going to get shot."
That's what she said.
I mean, that's ludicrous.
And you know how we are. I mean, I know how Lucas is. It's like if you walk into a spot, you see somebody hunting, you just back out and let them have it.
And that's actually what we were doing. We had seen the guy above,
hunting, huh?
but as we were walking down, I didn't realize she was in there. And she'd said that. And that's the thing. I mean, we're on public land. We're not on private property, right? It's like, I don't think ethically they understand, and they probably paid $5,000 to $7,000 for that hunt, right? Yeah. We bought our tag and went do it yourself. So
You pay a whole lot more than $5 or $7 grand for a live flight to fly them out of there. If it escalates any farther.
Exactly.
He's got less of a temper there, and I probably would have been right in that lady's face.
I probably wouldn't have been in her face, but I definitely would have liked to have had a conversation and said, hey, we're 13 miles back in. You don't need to talk like that. There's two of us here with a gun. You're going to get yourself shot if the right person comes along. So just let us say, hey, I'm hunting here. We're more than happy to back out.
Turn around and go.
There's kind of a funny story when you brought up the 65-year-old guy. Where we used to hunt growing up is we set up a wall tent. We kind of had this access kind of through public land. There was an old logging road that we could drive in. Well, the only way to get up into this area we used to hunt was you used to have to hike like a 3-mile hike from the road all the way up into the top. And my dad was never in really good shape, smoking cigarettes, going up the trail. And it was only about 20 minutes for us from the top where we put the tent. So my dad gets up there right at daylight one time, and this kid comes up he was probably in his 50s, late 50s, and he's not a really good shape guy, big belly, and, spent more time at the bar than he did hiking through the hill country. And,
Hooter?
Yeah, Hooter. Yeah, my dad. So this kid comes walking up. He must have been 25, and I'm standing there with my dad. I was probably only, I was pretty young at the time. And this guy's just sweating, pouring sweat off his brow. And he's dying. He looks at me and he looks at my dad and he goes, holy shit, how did you guys get up here so fast? My dad goes, we just started earlier than you, man. We've been up here for hours. Just that's some kid. He's just dying. He walks back down the end of the ridge. He's like, oh, you guys can have this place. I'm going back. So it's pretty funny.
Yeah, it's neat to see. I mean, it's neat to see someone like that, someone out that's enjoying it.
Yeah, that's great.
Back in, and it kind of bugs you to some extent, but then when you think about it, you're like, okay, this, like I said, this is public land. This guy's enjoying it just like I enjoy it, and you respect that. And if there's someone there, you do. If they were there before you, just ethically and morally, that's the right thing to do. So, but unfortunately, not everyone has that same level of ethics in the backcountry.
That happened to me this year when a bull got shot out of the middle of my. I had one in my scope this year. Guy up on the ridge, must have got there at the same time, spotted these elk, hiked in like a couple miles into them, and I was just getting ready to shoot this bull, and I hear this, and down this bull. It was a nice 6-point. Would have been my first 6-point I ever shot. Right? This thing drops right in the middle of my scope, and I'm like, I just kind of bummed. Well,
you got to be
good
kidding
for you.
me.
I'm not going to help you gut it out or clean it or drag it out, but good for you. And I turned around, and then we ended up shooting a bull the next day, so it was all right. But
somebody's trying to keep you from shooting a 6-point.
Man, that was terrible. I had this bull in the sights,
curse.
and he just turned and clicked off, had a range, rifle all dialed in, and getting ready to shoot. And sure enough, boom, and that bull just drops right in my scope. It kind of scared me. I thought I fired my rifle accidentally.
Did I do
So
that?
I hit it. This guy, I could hear this guy hooping and hollering up there, and it's good for him. He obviously put in the work to get back in there because we were several miles back in. But good for him.
Cool. So 2018 is here. We kind of reflected on last year. Is there anything you guys got going, at least from an Elk 101 standpoint, anything you guys want to share that may be coming out this year for 2018?
Elk 101 is just, it's its own beast, and it just keeps rolling down the hill. I'm just trying to hold on to it.
Sure.
And we hit 9 million page views on the website last year.
Wow,
and we're averaging over 1 million a month right now. So we'll probably be at 12 million, which is super exciting from a business standpoint, but more so from the standpoint of how many passionate elk hunters there really are out there, and how many people are interested in it. So, we have the University of Elk Hunting online course, which has been great, continues to grow. We hit 10,000 members last year in the online course. But I'm working right now on 3 mini courses that are going to be free, and they're designed around a elk hunter's previous experience. So for someone who's never hunted before, they've got different things they need to focus on to help plan a hunt and get out there. For somebody who's hunted but never killed an elk, there's some basics that we're going to focus on to help them to be able to kill their first elk. And then for someone who's hunted elk and maybe killed a handful, but just not year by year, every year, consistent success, we're going to focus on some of the things that will give them that edge. So that's kind of our big thing that'll be coming out this summer are those free mini courses. People are coming to the website. We want to make sure they have the resources they need to be successful, because that's really what Elk 101's about.
Are you guys going to put some more content on the University of Elk Hunting, or is it just going to be the three smaller modules?
So these 3 smaller ones will be completely separate, standalone, mini courses that people can go through. Speaking of the Linguist, though, we finally got permission and are in the process. Ben actually is done editing the first part, but we're taking all 20 terabytes of that footage and going to be able to use it for Elk 101 and share the behind-the-scenes stuff. So
awesome.
We've got the full-length interview. It's a 3-part interview with Will Primos that'll be coming out here in a week or two. We've got Larry D. Jones interview coming out. We're going to do a day-by-day hunt from the Wyoming hunt where we were all there and shot 3 bulls. So it's going to be a ton of content that's going to be hitting Elk 101 here. Yeah.
The other cool thing is when I was in the shop a few weeks ago, Ben brought in this new vinyl LP that he had that had it was cool, the kind of the pictures that were drawn of all 4, your dad and Will and Larry and Wayne Carlton, but it was the music behind the actual the video, which I thought was pretty cool. I think I saw you and Dirk had posted pictures of it online, but he'd literally just got it like off the press, and I was down there and he'd brought it in. It was pretty cool to see that.
And it's a commemorative deal, and not many people have record players anymore, but it's still just a table art.
Yeah.
And the really cool thing is Can Outdoors is making 0 profit on it. All of the proceeds from it are going to 2% for conservation
awesome.
And the Rocky Mountain
and
Elk
the Rocky
Foundation.
Mountain.
It's kind of companies you need to support there.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, the albums, I think they're available to buy now.
I think they are.
And
Yes.
it's a record. It's a vinyl record. But the really cool part about the music from the film, what are there, 8 tracks on it or something,
Yes.
9 tracks? Con Outdoors produced all of that. They created all of the music. So Drew, incredibly talented I mean, just off the charts talented musician, played the piano, played guitar, I mean, just everything. And there's vocals on it, and it's incredible soundtrack that they produced themselves.
You didn't get Brinker playing the guitar at all?
No, I mean, we tried, and he tried a little bit, but his album's coming out April 20th.
Yeah.
So,
Is it? Yeah, okay.
yeah,
It's
and
coming
it's
out.
great.
Country Roads, yeah.
I've listened to the whole thing, and it's so. Anytime somebody chases a dream, I get behind that. And I'm like,
Yeah,
you know what,
absolutely.
good for you. Go for it, do it. And for him, it was just kind of he taught himself to play guitar. He wrote all the songs. Like, I just want to record it to show my kids that if you have a dream, you can do it. And he sent it to me like the day after he got done recording it. And he's like, take a listen, let me know what you think. There's songs that you'll hear on the radio. It's a legitimate country music album, all written by him. The Swan Brothers and some other key people helped produce it and played on it. And it's pretty stinking awesome.
Every
check that out
song
for
is
sure.
a good, catchy tune that's a single in its own.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah, it is neat when someone finds a passion. I mean, especially when you've had a career or you have a career and you find a passion in life that takes you a different direction and still able to pursue the career standpoint, but be able to also pursue that passion is pretty cool. So
Yeah, I need to get out of this engineering field like he did at one point. Get back in Elk Hunting.
yeah, you got to pay the bills though. That's the part of the
My
problem.
wife might have a problem with that, but
Well, cool. I appreciate being able to catch up with you guys. It's always fun. When I look at the Google Analytics of our podcast, you guys have our #1 downloaded podcast from when we did one a year ago, and it's pretty crazy when every time I go and I pull up the analytics, I always show the podcast we've been with you guys is like one of the most downloaded. So, clearly there's a lot of knowledge and insight that you guys bring that people are interested in. When you talk about these different modules for Elk 101, I think that's a great idea because not everybody can consume all that information at one time. I think as someone who's brand new, when I got on the website and got signed up, I went through it and there was a lot of stuff in there that was kind of more of a review, but then there was a lot of stuff I'm like, man, I didn't even know that or think of that. But I was thinking from the standpoint of what about someone new reading all this? I mean, that is a lot of content to absorb for someone who's never even been out in the elk woods.
It's like taking a senior in high school and putting them into a senior year of medical school or something, and just trying to absorb all that because there's so much that goes into it. And that's really why we did it, just to be able to break it down into separate mini courses based on their experience to get their feet in the direction they need to go. Because you don't want to start talking to somebody about, the slingshot method or some advanced calling tactic that's never even put a diaphragm in their mouth and never even, they live east and they've never heard an elk bugle. They need to focus on, how do I even get tags in the West? What states, what does it cost? Where do I go? How do I start planning? How do I scout from back here? And focus on those things so that they get committed, they're ready to go, they're excited for it, and then they can learn, line upon line.
yeah, it's amazing what you guys are doing. I was actually looking at the app this morning, and I was pulling out my phone. I think I woke these guys up because there was a couple times you were thinking at 6:15 I couldn't
I know.
sleep.
I was hearing
They're
that.
been rustling around. And
We're all calling in the rooms.
Yeah, you're learning all year, right? I mean,
No, it's
That's what
addicting,
I
and the
go
more
to, yeah,
content
it's-
people can consume, I mean, it's like you're always learning. I mean, it's in anything in life. I mean, if you're an elk hunter, if you're an engineer, whatever you are, I mean, if you're not learning, you're dying, right? Continuously learning. And that's what this is about. Every time you go out there, it's a different experience. You learn something. And I think that's what always draws us to it is that, will to learn more and continue to learn. And, if there's ever, being an expert or being the best at it, that's what you strive for. But there's always learning lessons that you can take from the elk woods. So, Corey, also congratulations. We saw that you got another elk calling championship under your belt. So that was a nice little token there to add to this year as well. So
yeah,
that was pretty
this year
neat.
was special too because they changed the format at the calling contest, and so it was clean slate, head-to-head, single elimination. I mean, I can't explain the nerves that come with that. Before you get up on stage one time, you bugle, the judges score you. You don't know what score you have. All 40 or 50 or however many callers there are in the division go. And then they announce the top 5 that make it into the finals. And then same thing, the top 5 go. That's all based on score. And so you call once. If you make it in the finals, you call again. And wherever the cards land is where you land. This year, it was just like the NCAA bracket. They've got everybody seated. You're calling head-to-head against one person. You go up, and the winner of that advances to the next bracket and calls against the winner of the bracket below them. Wow. So every time you go on stage, there's a possibility if you don't win, you're going home.
Yeah.
And I looked at the bracket at the beginning. There's 64 team bracket basically for the division, and I'm looking at each side saying, okay, bracket 1, this is who I hope wins. Bracket 2, this is who I think would win. Bracket 3, and 2 of the 4 were eliminated in the first round, and the third one was eliminated in the second round of the ones that I thought would win the whole thing.
Sure.
And so it added a whole lot of nerves to the contest.
I saw that. I mean, and I guess from a judging standpoint, that would be difficult because the old routine, you kind of knew you were going through routine, but with the judges being behind there, here in the head, head to head, I guess it could take some of the anonymity out of it because they may not know based on who's calling. And, okay, so Corey Jacobsen's up, goes through his sequence, and then, Dirk Durham comes up. It's different when you're going head-to-head at that point, which from a judging standpoint could change the dynamic.
It does. Before, if you have 50 callers in a division and you go caller number 1, and then 4 hours later they get to caller number 50, there is no way they're comparing caller 1 to caller 50.
True.
Yeah.
And caller 1 could be the absolute best caller in the contest, and caller 50 could be the second worst. And caller 50 could make it in the finals and caller 1 wouldn't, just based on, you just get that, as you're going through. I couldn't imagine being a judge back there. My ears would be bleeding listening to that many, trying to sort them out.
Yeah,
so head-to-head's nice because all they have to do is say,
you're better than
I
that
give my
guy.
vote to the first caller, not the second one.
Sure.
And so it gives them a good apples
Is that a
to
format you
apples.
think they're going to keep with now? I mean, it's pretty popular and stuff.
I think so, yeah. They're going to continue tweaking it a little bit. And again, it comes down to judging, and it's not necessarily good judges or bad judges, but it's knowing what the judges are looking for. Yeah. And some of those head-to-heads that I thought, that's a 7-0 landslide for this guy, and he ended up losing,
So there's a little more strategy involved, obviously.
Yeah, you're always second-guessing, okay, what are the judges looking for? What do I need to do? And so...
Do I need to change my routine? Did that? And that's what, there was a lot of, at the back of the room, I did this, and it worked. Should I change it? Should I not change it? Should I just go up and do the exact same thing?
Sure. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of guessing going on based on the head-to-head, which is cool. I appreciate you guys. Donnie's there videoing, so all of us can see it.
That was neat.
Which
is
is
cool watching that,
always
for sure.
cool to see you guys out there doing that stuff. I know all as consumers, we appreciate that. So anyway, well, thanks again for coming on. We appreciate, again, having you guys, and look forward to this year and the content you guys are going to put out. Obviously looking forward to the stuff that we didn't see in Linguist that will come out, and having a lot of that digital content. I know Ben was saying how he got stuff from Rocky Mountain Elk, like truckloads of old footage of stuff that he was going through and mining through to try to figure out how do I use some of this. So to release and see some of that is really, I think it does tell the history, which is cool. It'll be exciting to see some of that. So for this show, you guys have any other engagements? I think you've got a seminar today, Corey?
Yeah, doing a seminar at 3 o'clock here at the Backcountry Hunters and Anglers Rendezvous. And
okay.
Yeah,
cool.
Just hanging out and meeting
see you
cool
down
people.
there.
Yeah,
cool. This
What
is
kind
a
of
neat
stuff are you giving out? We want to know.
that's the cool thing about
bugle tubes, contender.
I do, yeah. I've got some incredible sponsors that are just so generous with gear, and it gives me a chance at seminars afterwards to engage people with questions and answers. And so every seminar I do, if somebody asks me a question, I give them free gear. And so I've got a box full of I've got decoys and arrows and
Yeah, you listen
bugle
to that,
tubes.
listeners.
and-
Make sure you go to because we went to the one at the Expo too, and I was surprised all the stuff was given out.
Oh yeah, I gave away vortex binoculars,
Yeah.
and it was we had a ton of stuff. So
Cool. Well, thanks again, guys. Like I say, good luck this year. We'll have to keep in contact and see how you guys do, and we'll have to get back on at some point and talk about what was and what wasn't, and what's to be in the future. Right?
2018
Absolutely.
successes, hopefully.
Cool.
Yep. No,
All right,
thanks
guys.
for having us.
Yep.
Yeah, thanks for having us on.
Absolutely, guys. Take care. And for you two, thanks for jumping on with me today, and good to see you guys.
Yeah, it's good to be
Yep.
finally get on here with your partner Lucas. Here.
I know.
Next time will be a pig hunt in California in May, end of May.
Could be May. Yeah. We'll have to get some pigs out for you guys and see if we can't get you guys a good boar down or a good meat sow, as Nick would say. So
Yeah, my hunt in Texas didn't go too good last week, so
we'll have to talk about that later.
yeah, that's a good story too.
Anyway, thanks for tuning in, listeners, and we'll catch you guys for another venture on the RNA Outdoors podcast. Hey everyone, this is Lucas Paw, host of the RNA Outdoors podcast. Please check out Podbean and iTunes. If you have an iPhone or iPad, go to the podcast app on your device, search for RNA Outdoors, and hit the purple subscribe button. When doing this, it will automatically upload when new podcasts are loaded, and they will download into your queue. For Android users, you can access the podcast through Podbean, Stitcher, or use our website, www.rnaoutdoors.com/podcast. In addition, under the RNA Outdoors podcast channel, please leave a review and a 5-star rating. These reviews help boost our popularity and outreach. You can also follow us on our social media outlets, Twitter at RNA Outdoors, Facebook, RNA Outdoors, and Instagram, Rod and Arrow Outdoors. All links are in the show notes as well. If you like what you've heard, we hope you'll pass along our channel to your friends and colleagues. Keep up the good fight. We cannot sit by and watch the public lands devoted to wildlife protection wither away. There's simply too much at stake. Make your voice heard, speak up, and get involved with conservation efforts, and know that every little bit helps. As we say on the mountain, go farther, stay longer.